Okay, true story before I actually get into this review for a second. So it's Friday morning, getting ready up and early. I didn't have work that day, so I'm like, okay, so I got like at least half hour to get to the movies, get some food, maybe spark up a little bit, and then go watch it. So I did that, and while I was going in, there was a long line. So I'm like, okay, so a lot of people are coming to go see this. Okay, that's normal. As I'm in line, there's these people passing me around these admin one tickets. Like the old school admin one ticket prices things. So they gave me one of those. I asked, what's this for? He's like, oh, so you can give it to the front desk. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. I give it to the front desk. I'm like, yeah, they told me to come give you this. And they gave me a free movie, popcorn, and soda. So I'm like, this movie was made for me, especially coming out on Good Friday. So thank you. So Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire is the sequel to Godzilla vs Kong, also directed by Adam Wingard. Kong's been settling into his new home of Hollow Earth, feeling all nice and well until he suddenly walks across this ape, suddenly making him feel like, huh, I guess I'm not the only one out there of my race. So then, as he goes on to find on his journey, he realizes that his people are enslaved from a new kaiju named Scar King. And as he's trying to free his people, he feels like he needs the help of one old ally, or should I say enemy, Godzilla. That's the plot I can give you for right now, but let me just get into this for a moment because this is unreal to me, especially coming out this year. We went in a world where we were gonna have Godzilla versus Kong in theaters. We didn't get to experience it on the big screen because of, COVID at the time, and we watched it on HBO Max. Cool fight, but it's not as interesting as seeing it on the big screen. And I gotta say, even though it was the pandemic, it made about almost $500 million, and at least it warranted a chance to say, you know what? We can continue with this franchise instead of ending it right here. I'm gonna start by starting off with Kong because for all of the movies he's been in, I gotta say, even though I'm more of a Godzilla fan than a King Kong fan, he was actually kind of good in this movie. He was more evolved. He was more well spoken per se. He's wise to Hollow Earth now that he's gone away from Skull Island, and also the fact that I feel like this movie actually made me clarify that this could have been a Kong solo movie because Godzilla's barely in this movie. He shows up at some points, but he's mainly there for like upgrading himself for the big battle. As Kong is still looking along the lines of his journey, he's the one that gets the most screen time. Godzilla doesn't have too much until the last act of this movie, but then I'm like, we did get kind of Godzilla -1 last month, so I feel like we did kind of get a bit of him. Same thing with the fights. The fights and the visuals in this movie, I gotta say, this movie I can say is about maybe 70 to 30% more of the monsters than the humans because I remember the last couple of movies. I've had this one flaw where the human story is always the thing I'm not interested in. It's cool that we're getting a little bit more info on the monsters, but I want to see monsters fight. That's the point of this movie. Like the first Godzilla, looking back on it, Godzilla didn't even show up until the very end of that movie. And with King of the Monsters, they kind of fixed that, adding a lot of Godzilla and a bit for all the monsters to shine. Kong Skull Island, it was 50-50 with the humans and Kong since he's mostly there on Skull Island. But I gotta say, with this movie, I gotta say, if they made a movie where all the CGI creatures were just fighting each other just because, and we could watch the movie understanding what they mean, that sounds like a good idea. And I can't lie about it because everybody in my theater knew it. I understood what was going on, and at least it led to some funny moments in between too. One funny added element in this movie is little Diddy Kong right here. I gotta say, this dude had me cracking up on screen. Like when the moment he shows up, at first I'm like, oh, he's just one of Kong's people. Maybe he could be another relative or something like that. But no, he's a little troublemaker and also gets involved with the fights too. It was ridiculous, but I gotta say, if they were to make another Kong movie with just him, I gotta say, this is almost the Donkey Kong Country movie we're actually getting at this point. The monsters shine, but also I gotta say, more of the human characters in this movie because I remember how in the previous movies everybody's all serious and all like Godzilla's out there and we don't know why. Kong, he has mighty powers on Skyland, but we don't know what's gonna happen when he fights Godzilla. But in this movie, everybody's a cartoon. Like Dan Stevens as the new, I could say he's a monarch therapist with the monsters because he takes care of Kong and he takes care of all the necessities he needs. But also, I'm like, oh, this dude knows he's in a damn cartoon because the way he acts, the way he's all exaggerating with his moves, especially when talking about the environment around it, I'm like, wow, this dude is not taking this seriously whatsoever. Even Brian Tyree Henry from the last movie, because he was the podcast guy theorizing on what's going on Monarch, listing everything that's been going on with Godzilla and Kong and all the monsters. even him too. He's the one that everybody doesn't take that seriously, and at least everybody knows he's in on the joke. Because I remember in the last movie, he was funny in some moments, but at least it was a bit not in tone with the movie because the movie played out serious. But in this movie, everything's all lighthearted and fun, and I'm like, huh, Saturday morning movie. I gotta say, it's a real throwback to the old monster movies if you think about it. Some of my negatives with this movie is that it feels short for what it is, and I had to think about this because there's nothing in this movie I'm like, huh, this could have been longer. This could have been a bit more stretched out because I feel like everything takes place in between Hollow Earth and below Hollow Earth because the mainly 100% of the movie is in between Hollow Earth and on the surface because you get some of the adventures with Kong and some of the Monarch people looking for the mysterious tombs. While on the other side, Godzilla's on Earth, but you don't see what's going on with Godzilla because we see him go by upgrading himself monster to monster. But the thing is that I want to see what's going on between because I feel like if you added a bit more time in this movie, you would have seen exactly what was going on, especially because some of the fights are cool when we see them, but there are some fights I'm like, I wonder what would happen if we seen Godzilla fight this certain monster because there's a couple ones I'm like, wait a minute, is that this person? Is that that person? But it went by so fast. I'm like, I want to see the fights though. Godzilla was barely in this. Another thing is with the humans because I feel like I already said that we could actually do a MonsterVerse movie with just monsters as the main characters, but I feel like some of the human stuff in this doesn't make sense to a point because if you recall things that happened in the last movie, and also with some new information from Monarch Legacy of Monsters, it shows that Hollow Earth was the only one that they discovered. And in this movie, they discover another Hollow Earth with Scar King and another creature I can't mention shows up. And it's like, wait a minute, how did the humans know the info from here from ancient carvings that they don't even know of? Plot wise, it doesn't make sense, but it's more about how can we do the humans justice because I feel like every time we gotta have them because you can't just do a movie with only CGI creatures at this point. By having the humans alongside the monsters, it's fun, but it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, you're kind of stretching it, and it doesn't make sense for the universe you set up, especially since this is something new, and it's weird that you're reading cave markings from a wall that you actually didn't even get the language to. Besides that, all I gotta say is that I had fun with this movie. This is one of those summer blockbusters I feel like this wouldn't have been made just yet because people weren't even confident enough with the last couple movies, and it wasn't until King of the Monsters and Godzilla vs Kong actually brought the audience together because we're like, we want to see giant monsters fight on screen. That's what we're here for, and that's what they provided with us with this. All I gotta say is that if they want to keep going with this, go for it because if they can do original monsters in this movie, that gives them a chance to actually explore some of the characters we haven't seen. Because think about it, we got Diddy Kong. Who knows? We won't get Gazuki in it too. I gotta say, Godzilla X Kong: A New Empire, it stands in my book, and all I can say is it's a day one watch. Have you seen Godzilla vs Kong? Let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. All my social media in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.